Evening, and welcome to the second meeting of the Weare Finance Committee. I would like each person to state their name because we have some new members and we're still working on getting to know who we all are. So starting with Keith Erf.
Keith Erf.
Good job.
Dennis Aubin.
Tom Downing.
He's one of your new ones.
Is that T-O-M?
Yes. Tom.
Downing?
Yes. D-O-W-N-I-N-G.
Okay, thank you.
And before you leave and he leaves, you two need to exchange contact information.
Sure thing.
Lori Davis.
Tom Glow.
I'm also new, Nicole Herbst, Herbst.
R-B. And there's, Nicole is no H.
Correct.
Megan Thelen.
James Drury.
Chris Haig.
Oh, Matt Whitlock.
Neil Kirk.
Gary is not here tonight. I was notified of his absence, and Tammy cannot be here tonight. Are we missing anybody? Since you're doing attendance over there.
Oh.
Because I'm still working on
Other
some of
than
the faces.
Oh, Gary Evans, you said is not?
Right,
Correct.
he's not here.
Okay, then that's it.
Okay,
Wait, Tammy is also not?
correct. Going forward, before we open up this meeting to our general business, I would like to make the announcement that John Foss has resigned as town moderator. We have a new town moderator. Mrs. Meany, would you please stand up and introduce yourself?
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Eileen Meany. I was sworn in about an hour ago.
Oh,
Tonight, we are going to cover, first and foremost, we're going to handle the passing of what we voted on last week, but to clarify it, public comment. Tom, will you take that, please?
Yes, we had a lengthy discussion of whether or not there should be public comment, and I believe that we decided that there would not be. And if that's correct, what Lori just asked me if we could put it in the form of a motion, because it didn't appear in the form of a motion in the minutes last week. Does anybody object to that? Okay, I just want to clarify that means the general public, that's not cutting off discussion from a department head who wants to come in and clarify something, or,
To us, but
To-
not
to
for
us.
them. They can go to the Board of Selectmen's meeting and have that discussion.
for,
If they want, if the department heads go to visit the Board of Selectmen, that's a good forum for the public to go to the Board of Selectmen and listen to
right,
those.
but I mean, I wouldn't want us to shut off
No,
a department head who wants to come in and clarify something.
correct.
So I just wanted to clarify. So I do move that we not have an official public comment section to our meetings.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Abstentions? Motion passes. Okay, thank you. Going forward, Tom and Keith go to the CIP meetings, and that's what's first and foremost before we start looking at budgets. CIP gets to meet with everybody, and from what I understand, Tom will present, Keith chime in whenever you want, but they'd go, and I think the best way for us to learn about this is to have them tell us what they've heard and seen. And I think, Naomi, you're making copies, yes, no?
Yep. Smoking away upstairs.
So
Should we do minutes from the
question?
previous?
That was my question. Do we
If
do minutes?
we could, any which way you want to do this, we've gone years without passing minutes.
Okay, well, there was one draft from last year. It's up on the website. I didn't send it out because I didn't look it up. So we may need to delay that again until the next meeting to approve that. I did send out a couple days after our last meeting to everyone except those who I don't have contact info for. The minutes from our last meeting. There was only one suggested change so far, which was Neil made a correction that he didn't motion for his own nomination. If there's no objection to that, I'll make that change.
Any objections?
Okay. If there are
Motion.
no other changes, then I'll move that we approve the minutes.
Second, third.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Supposed to ask.
You're
You
opposed.
should at least ask if anybody's opposed.
Everybody said aye.
Well, we have a couple of
I'm
abstentions.
not voting because I'm new,
Yes.
so
Okay.
I can't vote
So
for that.
abstentions? Nays?
Nicole abstaining. Okay.
Are you anything?
I said aye.
Okay.
You're easy.
Okay. So Tom, do you want to teach us about CIP?
I do. These are basically the same thing that I submitted to the little library newsletter as well. But at the first meeting, we had a presentation by Benji Knapp, the Public Works Director. And the request that went in started with the Bridge Reconstruction Capital Reserve Fund appropriation. We're saving for bridges to be replaced on Lull Road, Old Francistown Road, and the major one is on River Road. And that's $105,000. And this will go to cover the town's 20% of the costs for bridge replacement. The state kicks in 80%, but we have to have cash in hand in order to get the state approval because we have to have our 20%. So this way, we're saving it in advance for that.
Is that our
Road re-
final, so I'm sorry, Tom.
Pardon
Was
me?
that our final, would that be our final payment relative to that?
Well, it depends.
know?
It is, yes. You know, I have a different opinion on that, but it's not really
the fourth
relevant.
one?
Hmm?
It's the fourth one?
It's the fourth one, yeah.
Okay.
That's what you meant, right?
Yes, yeah.
Road reconstruction, this is for, and I emphasize reconstruction. It is the yearly amount, and it's been increased. It has been, started a few years ago, for quite a few years, it was 450,000, and then it went to 480, and Benji is putting in for 500,000 for road reconstruction. And this is primarily to take the roads down to, there will probably be some resurfacing, but this is to truly rebuild sections of road. They come to like $200,000 a mile when you figure them starting at scratch, grinding out the old, putting down the base and adding the first year's pavement and then going back the second year with a top coat. So anyways, $500,000. Of that amount, $291,503 comes from the state, with $208,503 coming from the town. Now, that varies a little bit because we get updates on the state amount.
So that $500,000 is in addition to however much is in the budget to run the Public Works Department, to plow the roads, to maintain the roads.
Yes.
This is, say, betterment, improvements.
Strictly for
It's not strictly, Tom. They also use it for gravel and some other things as well, but it's mostly for that.
Yeah.
But right now, we're still working on the $10 million bond monies for road reconstruction, so that's still the primary.
2.5 billion, not 10.
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll make Benji very happy.
Taxpayers won't
Still
be
working
happy.
through that.
If we just spent $10 million or in the process, sorry, $2.5 million to improve the roads, why does Benji need this money this year?
We had seminars, actually I think there was a person who came to the deliberative session to explain as well, that the focus should be on saving the roads, not rebuilding the roads. And that is primarily to save what we've got by putting a new top coat on, to do chip sealing on some of the roads, and to preserve them, to get another 8 to 10 years worth of life out of the pavement that's in that iffy range.
But not to rebuild them.
Yes, they rebuilt the one just past Demetrius.
Maple Wall?
They did, but we also had that $480,000
of
for
that.
rebuilding last year.
Right.
I don't know how fine the line is, I can't answer that as far as where one leaves off and the other starts, but primarily that bond was to save what we have to, so we would not have to rebuild from scratch, because the rebuilding from scratch is so expensive, $200,000 over a 2-year period for a mile of road. There's a presentation by the State Department, this is a little off, but it's relative, the DOT came to the Southern New Hampshire Planning to present, and they basically said they can't afford to rebuild roads. They have to save what they have because it's so expensive. And that's the same thing Benji's been telling us too.
Yeah. A good example of that, they top-coated most of Thorndike Road, but when you get down to where the old water box used to be, it's awful. And I asked Benji, and he said it is so, the water under the road has so permeated that a top coat would not be cost-effective. They have to dig it up. So,
In the minutes of the board minutes, Board of Selectmen's minutes for September 5th, Benji did a report to the board and broke down what's been done on the roads this year. It kind of explains what we're talking about here, and that's online. The other, he's put in for a plow truck again, a 10-wheel plow truck, $220,000, which is the same amount that was in there, I believe, for last year. That would replace a 2006 Volvo, and I believe that it's replacing a 6-wheeler. The Volvo is a 6-wheeler. Also, he's put in for an International CV Series truck or equivalent, $86,500, and this is for replacement of the 2006 Chevy 4500, which is considered to be a 1-ton truck. And just as a note on that, vehicle maintenance costs on that 2006 Chevy was $5,000 to date for 2019.
Does this truck also plow too, or just?
It does have a plow on
Parking
it,
lots. It's a small truck, not a
Yeah.
big plow.
but it is a plow. And that's pretty much it for Benji's part. If you have any questions, I could answer. So you've got the bridge fund, the road reconstruction, the plow truck, and a international or equivalent for replacement of the 1-ton.
Do you have the copies, Naomi, or no?
I guess, there's still 2 more departments printing.
Which one do you have? We'll take anybody you've got.
Well, I just thought if I give them to you, you're gonna be thumbing through, then I'll give them to you when you leave,
Okay.
so that you can have them, because it's nothing worse than not paying attention.
What?
Okay, what's your second meeting
Okay,
about?
the second meeting dealt with Parks and Rec and the fire department. And Karen Stogner reported for Parks and Rec, and what they're requesting is $19,000. And that would be for an assessment, engineering assessment of 2 sites for feasibility as far as creating new athletic fields. They would be looking at Inison Field on Quaker Street and at the land that the town owns that the town is now mining gravel from over on East Road. When that was purchased, the plan was to eventually use some of it toward athletic fields. So this would look at those 2 sites, see which was most appropriate, and then the second part of that, which is included in the cost, would be a master plan for the development of athletic fields at one of the 2 sites, whichever is the most feasible at the time.
Now, out of that you've read here, did they at any time show that they have done a study of the needs and the field usage throughout the town and how it's actually backed up that we're getting here? Have they done that study yet?
Well, Karen submitted documents to show that the town's athletic programs are expanding beyond what the current field use is. She broke it down to the number of children participating and the different sports that are played on all of these fields. So I don't know if that qualifies as what you're asking.
Yeah,
but
I'm
she-
asking for a time management study.
I just take exception with what he said was true. She did present that, but she did not do a comparison between where they were and where they are. She just had some random numbers that Whack put together. So it's not clear what the need really is. But something else that Tom left out, maybe we can get to it, there's a possibility, in fact, I think she said they'd already agreed to this, had to commit to it solidly, that WAC would actually throw in $5,000 of their money to make up part of that 19.
Who was what?
The Weare Athletic Club, they're the ones who use all these fields, who are providing the numbers, sort of, regarding the usage of the fields. And
Yeah.
at least that would show that there's some commitment on the part of the people that are using the fields. Because one thing Karen explained was, she has no responsibility for the fields, the usage of the fields, what fields they use, any of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
All she's basically doing is being asked to raise the funds to improve them. She doesn't control how they're used. In fact,
Who
the kids,
maintains these fields?
the town.
The
Parks
town,
and
yeah.
Rec. Parks and Rec. But they're not responsible for doing it. The WAC is not their thing. WAC is a separate, Weare Athletic Committee, Club?
Club.
Is a separate organization that actually schedules games, uses the fields and that sort of thing. They actually also use the school fields apparently in some cases as well. But they have to coordinate all that. It's not her responsibility.
Okay.
Tom?
Yeah.
How many years have they asked for this money? This is not the first time, is it?
This is the first time for this specific purpose. They've had other
No, it
studies.
wasn't.
No,
just on the
last
ballot.
year they
It was
were
on last
asking
year.
for
It was
money
the
for
second year.
fields too, and we,
She's coming back for something.
For the same one?
yeah.
Yeah, essentially. It's slightly different. She had a little
Yeah,
bit
it
better
didn't-
numbers. she
didn't
thought.
sound,
Same idea.
Didn't
I
sound the
think the
same to
difference
me.
here now is that they also have WAC inputting money,
Correct.
which may help in that
Yes.
hopefully they'll have somebody here to actually discuss what they're looking to do.
Yeah, I was, if you recall, I was late to that meeting.
I do recall. I thought I'd try to help you out there.
And appreciate it.
Okay.
Fire Department, Chief Vazina indicated the fire department's not requesting any capital expenditures for 2020. What he did was lay out basically a 10-year plan of what he called the planned systematic replacement of first-line fire, medical, and support vehicles. And then over the 10-year period, the department will be replacing or requesting the replacement of a utility pickup truck, a cardiac monitor to you know what I mean, keep your heart going, which are presently 10 years old. There'd be a fire engine included, an ambulance, and a fire tanker over the period of 10 years. So, and all of this will primarily come from the fire department vehicle and equipment fund, which is the special revenue. Special revenue is significant because it means that voters have to approve the expenditures from that fund, as it would differ from a capital reserve. So that's basically what came out of the second meeting.
And he'll also be requesting 2 more full-time fire people.
Yeah, that would be not the CIP, though.
Just something else he's gonna put as a warrant article, so we'll
Yeah.
see it. He definitely talked about it, but you're right.
Yeah.
I don't know if they present that or not to the selectmen. Maybe they don't. But
Yeah,
nonetheless, we'll be considering.
They will be presented to the selectmen, I'm sure, but it wasn't,
Is he
But
hired
it's
too?
not part of
Wasn't
CIP,
actually
it's
CIP.
something that comes directly to us and the Board of Selectmen, and the voters vote on it.
Right, but the
directly.
chief definitely mentioned that as well.
What-
Is he
what would
hired
happen
too?
If
Yes.
we were more prudent and eliminated this fund, had the money from ambulance service go into the general fund, and then, like the highway department and everyone else, the fire department would have to make its case without having resources to pay for them from a special fund.
yeah, I don't think that's really for me to answer, Neil. You know, it's, it would just be opinion and with no authority behind it, so
That would be a discussion for the Board of
Yeah,
Fire Wards
'cause-
and the fire chief when they come in to see us.
Yeah, not, I mean, I'm not trying to evade.
But it's not
But
up
I
to
just- it's
this
not up
committee
for me
to
to answer
decide
that.
whether they have that fund or not. Our job is to look at the budgets that they present versus what they did last year versus the tax impact, and decide what is reasonable for the town. As far as the minutia of whether they have a fund or not, that's not our,
Except that if the fund were eliminated, it would substantially reduce the tax rate.
but that's not the job of this committee, to take out their change fundings. Go Go ahead.
The fund was created by vote of the town at a
Yes.
town meeting. So it could be put on the warrant to stop having the fund.
Absolutely.
But for this year, for this budget cycle, we would still have to use
Correct.
the fund.
But it is not the job of the Finance Committee to make recommendations to get rid of a fund, to push a fund. Our job is to simply look at what is presented, what has been expended, and look at areas where we could say, gee, we'd like to see that this is done better, but to approve or disapprove and make suggestions. But we are not here to mess with the mechanisms that is done. That is not the charge of this committee.
Even though we're supposed to consider tax impacts.
Even though we consider tax impact, it is not our job to take care of how that is structured. That is up to the Board of Selectmen and up to the departments to approach the voters. It is not this committee's job. I actually have checked into that. And if our new moderator has any insider would like to do some research on that, we are always happy to hear from you.
Taking a note, Lauren, in terms of, are you asking?
Well, I had originally, this came up last year, and John and I don't know if I had a discussion with you or not, but at the time, I know on more than one occasion I have, and it is not the purview of this committee. That's not what we were constructed for. If you read how it's laid out, it does not give us that kind of authority. Technically speaking, if we were a budget committee, then we would have that ability to pull those mechanisms, move things around, cut the budget, whatever we needed to do. But this is a finance committee, which simply means we make recommendations or non-recommendations. We make faces, we growl, we smile, but we do not get to say, we're now going to pull your funding. We think somebody needs to come up with a warrant article for that. So if you have any interest in wanting to check on that, I have no problems with that.
Just historically, I don't know when that fund was initially established, but there was a period of time when the use was amended so that we could solve a problem as far as daytime coverage for fire and ambulance. So it allowed the payment of the per diem firefighters and EMTs to come out of that fund to the tune of approximately $90,000 a year. And I think it was 2 years ago, it might have been 3, that was reversed. And so so the money would stay in the fund for these capital expenses. And I think the feeling was that the items that the fire department purchases are so expensive compared to really, well, except for Benji's trucks. But, you know, the fire engine, $450,000, the ambulance is like $250,000. And when we didn't have that, because we were spending it on the per diem firefighters, that impact was directly on taxation. So, and again, I'm not trying to sell anything one way or the other. I'm just giving a significant, what I think is significant as far as the historical use of the fund.
You sat on the Board of Selectmen when it went through, so you do have the understanding of it, yes.
If a warrant article were introduced, would that come before this committee?
Yes.
Yes, because
This
it
one did
is,
twice.
yes.
One that Tom was referring to.
because
too.
it is a monetary expense. It's
To eliminate the fund?
no,
Not a private one. You mean one from a
If warrant
citizen?
if a petition warrant article were introduced,
yes.
25 signatures, to abolish the fund, and that were a warrant article, would that warrant article come before this committee, and would we
Yes.
comment on it?
Yes, it would, because it is a money warrant article.
So if there's a warrant article, we can deal with it,
But-
but if there's no warrant article, we can't.
Correct. However, I'm going to look at our moderator and ask her to please clarify that for me and get back to me.
Absolutely.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
We might even need some to go to legal advice on, I
Yes,
would
I'm
think.
guessing that's
Yeah,
where,
and I just think there needs to be some more thought.
Yeah.
Because right now, that fund is, if you get a ride, then your insurance pays for it, goes into that fund.
And if you don't get a ride, it doesn't go into the fund. And that's what's paying for the equipment, is that money. You take it and offset it for taxes, that's fine, but then we're all gonna share the $500,000 or the $750 for the equipment that you're gonna be asking for. Right now, it comes from the fund, and the fund is self-sufficient, and it will be through the rotation that he's presented. I'm just asking you to think about it before you throw together a warrant article. to
Correct.
Dismiss it, because it's not a
But
statement.
Except that.
hold it, I want to make something very clear, and that is, while we're hearing about this, until we actually talk to the fire chief and/or the Board of Fire Wards to discuss what they have planned, at this point, none of us is in a position, we have no facts and figures to actually say yay or nay.
I apologize.
And I think, to be fair to everybody, I personally don't want to start discussions that I don't have any numbers to work with, just because we may not all agree. I think it's better to stick with facts and figures so that we know where we're operating, and then we can disagree. Anybody have any discussion with that?
I appreciate the questions on Neil's part, though. It's clarification on what we can and can't do. And then clearly we need more clarification, and I would suspect a little bit from legal.
Well, that's
Yeah, I would agree with that.
our moderator, Meany's job.
Do we have anybody going to the Board of Fire Award meetings as part of our, do we know? Is that part of our scope of meetings to attend?
No more than we go to the police department's meetings, or the planning board's meetings, or the highway department's meetings. As a resident, you certainly can, but as far as those, no, there's nothing that we have ever done with that. We tend to look at things as a whole, the elementary, middle school, the high school, and the Board of Selectmen.
Also, anything that's going to be in the budget has to be presented to the Board of Selectmen, so the committee members who are at the Board of Selectmen's meeting will hear that. Now, it may be that the Board of Fire Wards helps prepare the report or the requests for the selectmen, but actually the public discussion of it takes place more at the Board of Selectmen level.
Right, and as far as that mechanism of how the money's spent, that's totally between the Board of Fire Wards, the Board of Selectmen, and the town attorney. That is not something that this committee gets involved with either.
Now, the third meeting was held yesterday, so I did not do a write-up on it yet. But it was just strictly with the police department, and he is primarily looking at vehicles for this year. And he is requesting through CIP 2 vehicles. You're gonna have to help me, Naomi. The SUV is I know it's a Chevy, but it's,
Explorer,
I mean,
the one he has now,
no, is it Tahoe?
Chevy Tahoe was replacing Ford Explorer.
Okay, it's a Tahoe that he's looking for, which kind of goes along, if you remember last year, we held up on buying another vehicle because we were looking to see what the new chief was looking for. And he is looking for that SUV Tahoe. And I won't go any further because he'll be around to explain to
You should
you.
go a lot further.
Hmm?
You should go a lot further.
Well, you can.
So what
step
he's
right in
looking
there.
to do, he doesn't believe the Chargers, he believes the Chargers were a big mistake, and that we need to switch to a full SUV complement of police cars over the next 4 to 5 years.
Did he say why?
Yes. Ergonomics, functionality, specifically relating to rough roads in town, wrecking their
He actually had
design.
um,
And it-
us go on a little field trip out to the vehicles and compare the storage, for example, in the trunks of the
Chargers.
of the Chargers, phenomenally limited with what they have to carry. And had us sit in the vehicles if we desired to, the front seats.
Why was this funny?
Put it in the back seat.
Because if it's back seats for prisoners, they lock the
Kind of a
door, you
hard
can't get
steel
out.
seat.
I don't know. That might work for some.
Not quite as comfortable.
How do you know?
And so as Keith was saying, the ergonomics was a big part of what he was talking about. And
The cost, does he have a ballpark
More
figure?
Expensive.
Yeah.
About $4,000 more expensive each, current pricing. Plus all new equipment. So remember the whole thing with the Chargers was,
Oh,
we
yeah.
got the car, we got the equipment, we got new cars, we keep the same equipment. That would not go out the
How
window.
much would that cost per
A
vehicle?
lot.
It's like $15,000 a vehicle.
Is there any value in the equipment that now is brand new in the Chargers? Can that be sold? Is there a market for that?
No.
actually,
First, it wouldn't be sold now, it'd be sold in 5 years. The other thing, you didn't mention the pickup truck as well.
that's what I was going to do, but
Sorry.
he did, he's looking for a pickup truck. There are times when they need that capacity, and they've been
Do
using
what?
a private vehicle that belongs to one of the officers for that when he needs it. And I was a little fuzzy on this, maybe you can help me. Did you understand that the pickup truck would actually be the chief's car as well? Yeah, that's what I thought, too.
The car would become the lieutenant's car, I believe, or that or the animal control, I can't remember which one.
Actually, the present SUV, the Explorer, would be moved to animal control. They've already gotten rid of the old Crown Vic.
Actually, they have it, but they're not using it. It's still sitting
I
over
th-
there.
Is it?
It's one
Yeah.
option.
It's going to the auction. I thought he said it had, but,
Do we have an animal control person?
We do.
yes, we do.
When? Did we?
Um,
they go
About a
forward?
month ago, we hired one.
Cool.
Local? Are they local?
Yeah, she lives on Colby Road.
Canada.
You never know.
Keith said Canada.
Yeah.
Canada.
Controlling the moose population.
Okay, so what else, who's coming up next for CIP?
That's it. Next week, they put it all together and start planning the report that will be presented to the planning board, and then move on to the Board of Selectmen, and then eventually to us.
Naomi,
You can check maybe not us.
can you keep us apprised of a timeline for getting CIP in here as early as possible, please? Also, it would be very, very helpful if we had the department's heads in earlier than
For
last.
CIP or for,
Well, you want CIP first to talk, and then we want to actually have the department heads come in, because they're going to talk about what they did in CIP. If you have CIP come in and each department head with them, it's the longest thing on the road, and then we start gravitating to what else is in their budget, which is not the proper time to do that. So it seems to make more sense to have CIP present, we all look at it and go, oh, and then as the department heads come in, they will do the CIP along with their regular budget.
well, remember Jack comes in and they all come in together.
Okay,
So after Tuesday, they'll know what the subcommittee's gonna recommend.
okay,
And then we start down the budget path, because we'd like to get capital out of the way.
mhm.
And I can get CIP in here, I'm not sure exactly when, but I can get that in there sooner than, because then we start our budget schedule on Monday night, starting the 28th of October.
Okay, because our next meeting is we are in October, the 1st of November. And if necessary, we can always, if we can get them in at the end of October, depending upon how it works with this group, that would be really great for us, because otherwise, we're then having the department heads coming in either in December, which is difficult, and we're crap, by that time, it's hard for us to go to you and say, we need this, because we don't know. So the sooner we can get CIP in, and then the department heads to go in over their budgets, whether or not the Board of Selectmen have approved it, at least we have something to look at. And we've been able to talk to them, and then if we need more information, Do you want the request to you or to the department head?
For questions?
Well, if I said I would like to see a better explanation on how many calls they want on for, we'll say PD and fire, and what the duration of this is running versus that, would you rather control that instead of me going to each person? I can do it either way, but I think we should only have one person going and doing this and instead of having everybody on our committee doing
There's a
it.
good chance that what you just asked, they'll probably present to you anyway, because a couple of different things are going on that they're looking at call numbers.
Okay,
Because as you know, the police department only has 5 people right now.
yes.
So,
Kind of limited on the timing because the CIP has to present first to the planning board because it's actually a subcommittee of the planning board. And then from there, move to the Board of Selectmen. The selectmen don't have to prepare the warrant before they move on to this committee, but there is a progression there that they're required to hold to.
Right, but we have in previous years managed to expedite some of this, and that would help us greatly in moving forward.
are you sticking with the one meeting a month?
No, we can bump those. The one meeting a month was just a place that of, yes, everybody knows the first Wednesday of every month we will be here, but we also clarified that, stating that we will add meetings as we need to add them. That's part of what this committee does. Because we take information as fast as we can get it, and sometimes we have to wait a long time for it. That's not on you, but it just happens. And we've had, in different years, 2 or 3 meetings in a week, and they've been 4-hour, 5-hour meetings. So, you know, anything we can do to expedite that process, that would be very helpful.
I
And,
don't really have that schedule until, I can probably work with Jack on Tuesday.
okay.
Tuesday would be the time.
But if anybody on this committee would like extra information, I'm going to ask that they ask me for it, and then I will go to you instead of, say, Keith going to the police chief, then Tom wanting to go to the police chief, and then somebody else going to the fire chief, because they all have jobs to do, and if we all keep knocking on their door, that just,
Yeah, and what we've done at the board level is if you run it through me, then I disseminate it to everybody,
Mhm.
so that nobody's gonna one-up on anybody.
mhm,
You all get the same information at the same time.
correct, correct.
So I could do the same thing, I've created a group, I sent you guys, your emails will be full of all the CIP stuff, because I sent it out earlier. But I made copies, because it's a lot of pages. But I sent you all there if you're one that wants to look at it and have it on the
That's
tablet or
me.
the laptop or whatever, it's there. But I haven't yet for hard copy, but that's how we've been doing it, so that you don't get to a meeting and have something that someone else doesn't have, because that's defeats the purpose.
Correct. And just so the public knows, should the public have any questions or want to see anything, your contact is Naomi. We do not provide the information here. Anybody who's watching this is all right-to-know information. You are all allowed to know about it and to go and ask questions. And if you have questions, if you're not going to the sessions, go see Naomi. Call her and make an appointment.
I do have the budget schedule if you want, after you're done.
That'd be great. You
Na-
wanted to say
yeah,
something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Naomi a question. Normally, is the CIP report, once it's finished, put on the website?
I mean, I haven't, but I can. Once it's made through, all it stops. I wouldn't put it up until it's made all it stops, because the planning
Right.
board has the opportunity to change it.
Yeah.
Selectmen have the opportunity to change it. So until it's made its final rest.
Yeah, I just had forgotten whether it was or not. I don't think it has been in the past, has it?
Nope, we could throw it up, we could throw a PowerPoint up, we can do whatever. We're getting better at that.
And I'm sorry, when was that anticipated to be, did you,
Well, it
Did you
won't
have
know until
anticipation or not?
Tuesday, until I sit with Jack Dearborn to
Okay.
figure out his schedule as to when we can put together. And then he's gotta get to the planning board, which, planning board comes before us, because it's a subcommittee of the planning board.
oh, right, okay.
So, I think their meeting,
Third
we
week?
got the November schedule, was 14 and 21, but, I think they're meeting the 24th of October. Is that right, Neil?
So it goes here.
Thursday,
She meets with him.
Thursday.
Planning board,
I
then
don't know.
BOS,
Second
and
and
then us, correct.
If it's if Thursday is the 24th, yes.
Is it the second and fourth? Thursday?
Second and fourth.
So the 24th would be,
Fourth.
probably could get to them, and then possibly you could get to the selectmen, I'd make an exception, I guess, to go on the 28th. And then you guys could have it for November 6th, which is the first November. Would be the best I can do for you.
And
Just
then,
twisting some arms, including mine.
but then we're going to need to get those department heads in meetings in November.
Right, but you, last year you brought Jack and everybody was here because Jack made the presentation and then you could defer as he went through the whole thing to the department heads that were sitting here and kind of did it as one stop, at least for CIP.
Mhm.
Mhm. No, that would be great. If anything we can do to expedite this, that will greatly help. Okay, any more questions on CIP? Now I'm going to ask the people who, let me back up. We have people that go and watch the Board of Selectmen's meetings. We have people that go to John Stark's school board meetings. And then we have people that go to the elementary, middle school.
Weare School District.
Thank you. So, I was going to ask for a report of that, and I will from the different groups, but I have 2 new members. Now, we had Donna slotted to be on one of the schools because we were short. Where, do you have what Donna was supposed to
She
be
was
in?
on John Stark.
Okay. Nicole, do you have an objection for being, are you a teacher?
No.
Do you have an objection to staying with John Stark? We need people there.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I guess when are their meetings? Because that I don't know.
I have no idea.
They are Wednesdays, I believe.
If you go on the high
Okay.
school website, you can always call the high school.
night.
They're very good, and the SAU is good at that.
SAU24.org. SAU24.org.
Now, you don't have a home yet.
Well, I live at 28 Winterberry Lane.
Oh.
We put him on the town side.
Okay, so you are now on going to Board of Selectmen's meetings.
That would be better because I travel for work, so
Great.
Mondays would be better days.
So you will go to the Board of Selectmen, there will be other Finance Committee people there, and your job is to listen as they start hearing from the various departments and committees.
Mhm.
They will look at you and say, does Finance have any questions? And you can ask questions then. Make sure that you speak only as Finance, and then if you have a personal, I'm not happy about something, that's done at public comment or done as you personally. But you
What
do
was your
have
last
that
article?
opportunity as Finance.
Right?
And Naomi is always very good about handouts. Beth is very good about handouts.
So when do you want me to start going to those?
Well, Monday.
Okay.
We have a meeting Monday, right?
Not for anything on budget this Monday. That first budget one is 28th.
Right, but generally you
Thank you.
go just to keep an eye. So tactful am I. But it's good to know what's going on in the town, because most people do not
You
go.
can e-subscribe to the website if you've tried it, it works really well.
Okay.
Mm.
If you go to our website and e-subscribe for selectmen's agendas and selectmen's minutes,
You go all the time, don't you?
No, I haven't been, but unless I
Okay.
want something.
and that you did the agenda.
So now that everybody knows what committee they're on, I need to know the people who went to the John Stark School Board meeting, what do we know?
Well, I didn't go to the John Stark School Board meeting. I don't think they're working on budget yet.
Yeah, that's why I didn't go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you want background information as to what kind of things they're talking about, I will start going, but I wanted to get on their email list so that I not only got the announcements of the meetings, but anything else that they've distributed.
It generally behooves us to go to all their meetings
Mhm.
because sometimes they discuss things that we find we might be more interested in than usual.
They also discuss those things when they begin their budget process.
Mm. It's in their dog and pony show, so.
Do we need to be concerned that Lorraine is leaving at the end of the year? Will that affect anything?
It may affect how much they pay the next administrator, but there's,
She's going to be here through the entire budget process?
yes.
Through June, I think.
Yeah,
Yes.
so too, yeah.
Can hardly wait.
Have we, anybody gone, just out of question, have we been to the Weare schools at all?
Yep, I went.
What, anything to report?
Yeah, I have some stuff to report.
Great. Go for it.
So I didn't go to, what would this been, August, but there was one thing that I thought was interesting, that just to keep on the mind, that the school, that Center Woods was actually awarded a vestibule, what is it? They were awarded a grant to improve the vestibule security project.
Correct.
So and it's like, they were awarded 80% of the project cost, not to exceed $5,344. So there's that, but they were also awarded, that's for a limited accessibility project. And then the security project, they were awarded 80% of a project not to exceed just under $100,000. So that's just something to think about, that they will be asking, I don't know if it will be in a warrant article, it will be in part of their budget, that additional 20%.
They're not doing it now in this fiscal year?
I do not know that. That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
These things that
The
were,
project must be completed by December 31st, 2020. So that would be my assumption, that that the 20%, unless they find money in this year's budget, that it would come out of next year's budget somewhere.
But isn't that December 31st in the following year's budget?
That's what I'm saying. It would come out of so it would be in, December 31st, 2020 would be in it would be in this coming year's budget, right? Because we're in 2019, so next
Correct.
year is 2020.
No, but their year.
fiscal year is
July
different.
1st to June 30th.
Correct.
So they start, their year starts June 30th of
2020.
7/1 of 2020.
July 1st.
2020, so it would be in the middle of their school year,
Correct.
yes.
is the deadline.
Correct. And as we're talking about this, I'm like, I should email the assistant superintendent, ask them, are they going to use funds from this year, or are they, is it going to be next year? I will put it on a note to email them and see if they have some indication of what they're going to do.
Presumably, when they applied for these grants, they must have had, okay, we know about the vestibule. What is the other one for?
So there's a vestibule that's just under $100,000, and the other one is actually the Weare Middle School Limited Accessibility Project, and that's not to exceed $5,000, just over $5,000.
It'd be nice to know if they're going to have enough money left over to take it out of this year's budget.
I will ask that question.
That is something that I really want to know, and I don't know who needs to be asking this, but I went through all of our materials from last year, and neither of the two school districts gave us a year-to-date expenditures. And we did find that there was a request we turned down, and there was money available for that, which probably came from their budget that they hadn't expended year-to-date. So if the town always posts that when they do our budgets, but the school district did not.
They
What?
never have, but we certainly
Right.
can ask. I can call Lorraine and make sure that we get a copy
Yeah,
of
the
that.
school year just ended, they just did the audit.
That is an excellent question.
Exactly what you're looking, I'm trying to understand what you're looking for. You're right, they're really bad at getting this information. What specifically you're hoping to get in regard to the awards? Whether they're gonna take it out of the current budget or not?
Well, when we look at the town budget, we have two columns that we can look at, and one of them is year-to-date expenditures.
They do show that in the handout they give us. The middle school does.
I didn't find anything in the budget format. It may have been on something else.
It's not in the budget form, it's a one-page thing that shows
Okay.
revenues and expenses.
But you,
It's not broken down by account.
right,
No.
and we certainly can get that. I can ask Lorraine
Yeah,
if that's what you're
because
looking for. Is that,
It's helpful
okay,
in looking at, for instance, if somebody's close to being over budget we know that there's a need that they should reflect in their proposal. But we
Right,
don't have
it's
that
like
number.
the Board of Selectmen, when we're looking at their budgets, you can tell whether police uniforms is over or out, whether fire has expended more on fuel for the trucks. You can tell if overtime is running high. Is that the kind of information?
Yeah.
Okay, then I will ask for a much more detailed report. I can get that for you.
They were in a default last year, correct? This year, they're not.
What's that?
School, were they in a default budget?
No, their
last
budget
year?
passed.
But he's, I think that's what.
That's this current year, the budget
Right.
passed.
Right.
The
The
year
year before,
prior,
it was default.
Which is the one she was talking about the information on, was a default year.
I would guess that it
Well,
would.
it is, because there is
Sorry.
some issues relative to what they did prior to
Yes.
this year's budget in
Yes.
expenditures.
You're right, but the problem with what she's asking for is they have a hard time generating the data that she's asking for. At least that's what they claim.
Oh, is it?
I will get you your data.
So do you want to ask about the 20%, or do you want me to email about that?
I'd like you to email about that. You seem to have a very good handle on what's going on, and I think it's good to
Did-
have those
Did they
contacts.
say when they're gonna start their budget presentations?
They did not say. They didn't say anything about that. They had some discussions about, like, that they're looking at it and stuff, but there wasn't anything about a finite date of when they're going to start that. They did discuss, like, some things about, that I guess there's some new laws that say that the technology safety standards are required, that the school adhere to these technology safety standards, meaning that, like, the student's information is secure and other things like that. They didn't really go into what that meant, but that's my assumption. And that they needed to look into whether that was required to be included in the default budget.
Neil, you have expertise in finding out the new laws and how they apply to different things because you were a state rep. So does Keith. I would like you two to look into that just a little bit more so we have a better handle on what they're talking about. Clarification of information is not always forthcoming, and I think it's important that we know what is actually written down and what it actually means versus somebody just says, and this is not on you.
No, I know, I understand. That's why I'm bringing it, because I don't know the
So I
answer.
would like you and to do a little bit of homework on that, please.
Does anybody know relative to the John Stark, the issues? Obviously, their Wi-Fi and everything has been down. I don't know if that's part of that security change. It's been down for a couple weeks. And then also, I know they're over there drilling a new well because they haven't had water. So I'm just curious about that relative to what the budget is. So they had to bring in 20,000 gallons of water.
How long
they
haven't
haven't
they
had-
had water, Dennis?
I'm sure it's been at least a week, probably.
Where is this?
John
Start.
Stark.
The high school?
There's no water.
Really?
Yeah, they were there drilling a well yesterday. So I saw them yesterday, and my daughter told me last week that
Their well went dry,
I-
or it was polluted?
Go to that meeting.
Yes.
October 9th.
Inquiring minds would like to know.
I'll be honest with you, I can't
Yeah.
tell you, I have no idea.
Well,
I cannot attend. I will be out of state.
So-
Well, I've got that date now, so we know.
I thought that well was being drilled because they thought they were going to find oil to solve their budget problems.
No, it's the gold
Well,
mine that they're
maybe.
digging.
Aren't they heating with wood chips now?
Yes.
So they don't need the oil.
They needed to
No,
sell.
they do.
They need
When
oil
wood
to pay
chips
for everything
don't
else.
suffice.
Oh.
Are they using, no, they're using propane, I guess.
No.
As a backup.
Well, it's propane.
Is it propane is the backup?
Yes, but it's wood chips that,
Wood chips is their
Do the
primary
main
Propane
deal.
this
fuel
time of
source.
year.
So the other things were that kindergarten, they are not going to, as of this point, put full-day kindergarten on the ballot. There was, apparently the kindergarten group is not, the committee that they have of parents, and they have a school board member on there, is not happy with that decision. So they're having a meeting, and then I think they're going to come to the school board for October's meeting, for this month's meeting, and discuss again. But it seemed to me like they were pretty, like, we're not gonna do this year, we're tabling it until next year.
Was there a reason for that?
They didn't say there was a reason. I personally, I think it's because the town said you don't have a good enough plan. And it may be because Lorraine's leaving and they're looking to wait for the new superintendent to come in and see what they think. I don't know.
Well, the
I've
other,
heard rumors, but, you know, that's.
the other question is, are there contracts this year? That's a question that should be asked of everybody.
Paris, I would say. I think they were only a one-year contract.
I think so too. I was just gonna say that. I think the Paris room.
And it may be one of those things too, that it was very decisive in the town, but the other thing is, it may be if they want a contract for one thing, they are picking
That's
and
exactly
choosing
what
and
I
being
think, too.
wise.
I
But
think
we
that they're-
need to know if there are contracts. That's very important because we need to have we need to be aware of what's going on. That is not always clear either, but should somebody want a copy when the contract, if there is a contract, or you want to know what the current contract reads, I can get copies. They'll be sent to you electronically, but you can get a copy of the contracts.
See, I have written down that the teacher's contract, I don't think it was 3 years, but that doesn't, and that the support staff was 3 years, but I'd have to go back and look at, my notes. I know that John Stark was 3 years, but I feel like that it was staggered, so I don't think that's correct. So I'll get back to you on this.
So, Chris, for John Stark, you want to check on their contracts, what they are,
Oh, yeah.
and
that.
if Megan will check on the other side, that would be great. Nicole, if you have questions, please talk with Megan, because I know you're new to this, but don't be afraid to ask. We all had to learn, and jump right in, and there is no dumb question, and it's important to have as many eyes and ears on this as possible. We're talking a lot of money.
So support staff was 3 years
Okay. For
we-
the
That's-
Weare?
for the John Stark.
John Stark, yeah.
And we don't have anything here for the teaching staff, so we'll find out about that, but I think it's coming up.
Okay, I will also call the SAU.
Support staff is not parents. Support staff is janitors, cooks.
So Paris fall under their own contract.
So, yeah, there's one.
For the middle
Yeah,
school
falls
and
under that. Yep.
the grade school, yes. Great job.
Oh, no, there's actually one more thing.
Sure.
Hold on. I'm just writing myself notes. Here. The other thing was, they do listen to us. They were doing quite a bit of legwork and discussions about planning for the technology budget, about making the spreadsheets and the information that they give to the public and to us better.
Nice.
Saying, you know, how old are our equipment, what equipment is broken and not working, what are we replacing it with exactly, get it, like breaking down the unit price so that we have that information.
They heard us.
So they are listening. And they had probably, I want to say half an hour, but maybe it was like more like 20-minute discussion about this, going back and forth about how they were going to make this basically Excel spreadsheet or database work for them so that they could have an appropriate budget in that they get the support that they needed and we also get the information we need.
When is their meeting? You're the 9th, correct?
It's, yeah,
It's a Tuesday.
yeah,
I
it's a
think.
Tuesday. Yeah, it's October 15th.
I'll make a point of going to that meeting with you, just so I learn.
And that's the only thing that they had. They talked a little about the SRO, but they were very, very quick about it, so I don't know if that's coming up again.
Who's chair?
Oh, you're gonna ask me that.
Yes. Just because that's a quiz.
I know. I know, I can see her face. I could describe you to her. Her to you, but the woman that used to, short hair, she used to sit to the left of Marge.
Yeah.
Oh.
See, he doesn't.
Okay,
All right.
all right.
You're gonna make me look it up.
I was thinking,
In the chair, huh, wow.
And Sue Moran's on the board, right?
Wendy, that's what it is. Wendy.
Yes.
hurry.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Was she?
What's that?
She a teacher?
What's her name?
Wendy Curry?
Wendy
No, no,
Curry.
no, that's not. Pat
I thought he was, like,
Cohen's wife.
Being funny.
How long has she been on the board?
A couple of years.
Yeah, she got on 1 or 2 years ago.
Well,
This is
she
at
was
least her
on
second year.
before that and got off.
Right.
And then she came back.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, anybody else have anything to add that is fruitful and we need to entertain? Dennis, you're grinning over there. Is there something we need to know?
Just enjoying life.
This is the place to do it.
Naomi, do you have anything you would like to add, share?
I have the agendas of when the departments come into the board on Monday night.
Okay,
So the 28th, which is when we're planning on doing CIP, we're also gonna do the revenues and the default.
and we will always get copies of these, right?
And then on the 4th of November, we're gonna do the police and the library. The 11th, we have no meeting because it's Veterans Day, and we're not, that's
Um,
holiday.
I'm sorry, did you say that was on the 4th?
The 4th is police and library. The 11th, we're gonna skip,
You won't have a meeting in the middle of the week?
probably not.
Okay.
November 18th is gonna be fire. And then November 25th is gonna be DPW, which does the highway, transfer station, water and sewer.
What's the date on that?
11/25, just before Thanksgiving.
Okay, so when they see you, after they see you, they can come see us. So theoretically speaking,
Your December meeting, you could have everybody and have a late night.
no, theoretically, if PD's come in and visited you November 4th, we could schedule a meeting later in that week or the following week and have PD and library come in and see us.
Well, hold on a minute. She just said a few moments ago, maybe half an hour ago now, November 6th, I think she said we could expect to see the CIP.
Right.
So let's go
Right.
from there.
But if they've already presented their budgets to the Board of Selectmen,
I would say provided we don't have any huge changes to this huge folder.
there's no reason why we can't hear about their budgets.
Same
mean-
time CIP is here,
Well, CIP will be on the 6th.
correct?
They're going to be talking to the police on the 4th. So anytime after the 6th in November, we can ask PD and library, we can have another meeting in November
After the 6th.
to have them come visit us to expedite some of this. And when's Thanksgiving? What's the date?
28.
What's late?
What is you trying to get from them? So they're gonna be here on the 6th to talk about their capital stuff.
Right.
What is you hoping to get from them beyond that?
Well, what I
for-
want is if I can get at least 2 sets of budgets that we've discussed in November, because December is going to be hard-hitting with,
We don't have a budget till the selectmen set it.
but if they're proposing something to the Board of Selectmen, it gives us an opportunity to hear what they want and start asking them questions. The Board of Selectmen can take it out, but
Okay, you just had this conversation with Neil about not talking about things until they were put forward by the appropriate bodies.
right, but
Because
if
the
they've proposed
selectmen-
it to the Board of Selectmen, it is fair
I'm not
game.
saying that it's not gonna be need filling of some holes.
When will, if we wait for the Board of Selectmen, when would we, what's the earliest we could anticipate hearing? Because we can't wait until January.
The first week of December, right?
But we've got
I would
December.
say December.
Right. But what I'm trying to get is, can I hear the first week of December by the second week to get that done? Because it's not practical if we get this all the third week in December. People aren't going to be available for meetings, so then it gets pushed to January, and then we're landslided.
I mean, we can try to do it, but if the police shows up on the 4th and the library shows up on the 4th, they need to go back and do something. I'm not gonna make them wait until the end. I can tuck them in with somebody else. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
There's not gonna be any huge surprises, I can't imagine. It's pretty straightforward. Could share the budgets wages and benefits and salaries, you know, so.
Didn't last year we wait until December to review all the budgets?
And
We were crunched, I'm just.
we were crunched, and what I'm trying to do is, you know, the schools always come in January, and we're still wrestling with some of the department budgets. So now we have the schools, and we wrestle with that because they're a very huge piece of the taxpayers' money, and theirs is a very interesting setup to try and follow and understand. So that takes a lot, and I'm trying to make the process, if we can move some of this stuff forward in December, it makes January much easier for us to handle, and if we need more information from somewhere, we've got the time to get it.
I'm sorry, so if their last meeting is November 25th of all their departments, if we schedule a couple meetings, or at least one meeting, one long meeting like we did last year with all the departments in the first week of December, if we need to further that, why can't we just set up another meeting?
Yeah, we're gonna have to probably
On that
have
week,
two
or-
meetings in December, and
Do 4 and 11 and get everybody.
Yeah,
And then if we need the following week.
half and half, right?
Christmas is smack in the middle of the fourth week of December, so there's time.
there's time. Yes, Neil?
Naomi, do you have a schedule that shows when the selectmen will finalize their budget?
We'll finalize,
Yes.
statutorily?
So that, no,
Oh.
so that after they've heard from the police and fire and everybody else, they have to put the whole budget together, and at some point, that's finished. Do you have a schedule that suggests when that date of completion might be?
Budget
Don't have a
hearing.
set schedule, but I'm thinking the first or second week in December, because then you have to do warrant articles after that.
The warrant
What I'm
articles were
trying-
late last year.
What I'm trying to do is to think, to see if it's possible for us to set up a schedule that allows the selectmen to do their work,
Mhm.
and then we get the budget, the entire budget, and then we can do
Our
our
work.
work, asking questions if needed, if need be, from the police or the fire. So rather than have these folks make two presentations, one to the selectmen and one to the finance committee, we would get the final budget, and we would be looking at the overall consequence of this, with questions to be asked if there were a specific issue. For example, if the selectmen come in with a budget that's a 2% increase in the tax rate,
Mhm.
chances are that we would approve that. Without, I certainly would. Without
After
my-
last year's tax rate, I can honestly say I'm going to be scrutinizing this budget, all the budgets, very tightly.
That's
We haven't
fine,
set
but
the tax rate yet, though.
No, but I'm looking at what the increase
Yeah,
was
but
last
you
year.
also based it on 3.5% bonding rate, and we got 1.62. So,
Where you been hiding that piece of
you
information?
can say that, but, I mean,
Inquiring minds would love to hear these
sorry, I didn't mean to
things.
interrupt.
And we didn't have adequate information, because they didn't have adequate information on revenues. So, but my point is that,
No, you're right.
what we do is to write a very brief paragraph saying yay or nay with a couple of reasons for each of the budgets. And there's no reason for us to reinvent the wheel if the selectmen have come up with something that's reasonable, if the school has come up with something that's reasonable. Where I think we need to do our homework is if they come up with something like, say, 5%, then we really need to look at that, in my view, to see if that's absolutely essential, or can we suggest areas or have rational basis for telling voters, no, vote for the default budget because the selectmen have, had, or the school district is
Go
asking
ahead,
for too
then I'll
much
give
money.
my opinion.
No, isn't that more typical of what's happened in the past? The finance committee looked at the budget as a whole rather than as individual pieces, because we really shouldn't be adjusting the pieces of it. We should let the selectmen put it together, and then, as you're saying, I'm agreeing with you, that we take the budget as a whole. Surprising.
Glad you clarified.
Please make note of that, Neil.
Up until last year,
I think you'd probably be surprised at the number of
Up until
times that we have
last year,
agreed.
Finance Committee has been known for tearing apart everybody's budget. We've been very fair about shredding budgets. Last year, we chose not to get involved with the town budget. We trusted the Board of Selectmen. But the taxpayers, can't speak for everybody, but the people I've run into have flat out asked me, do you look at what each department is spending and how they're spending it? So to me, unlike being involved in a political arena, I'm not concerned about popularity. I'm concerned about, is everything being expended the best way it can? And that's how I look at it, and I feel that I have to look at that for the people that I'm representing.
I
That's.
don't think that's our job. I think that's the selectman's job. Our job is to look at it and say, can the taxpayer afford it?
Well, if that
But-
were true, then why would we even bother looking at the school budget? We'd just sit there and say, oh, 10% increase, 5% increase, fine, good to go. That's not how we handle the school budgets. We look at the school budgets, we tear them apart, and we all know that, that's been on the Finance Committee for the last 5 years. We have looked at these budgets, Keith has done it, I've done it.
But the reason for looking in detail at the budget is because the proposed budget is excessive. If the proposed budget comes in within a reasonable amount from a taxpayer's point of view, and we could differ on that, what the reasonable amount is. But if the budget comes in at a reasonable amount, then our job basically is quite easy. If the budget comes in at an excessively high amount, then our job is to look at some components and to say, for example, there's too much money being spent on police or fire or public works or whatever it is, and we've gone through their budget to be able to make that judgment, and that statement goes into the report as supporting our recommendation not to vote in favor of that budget.
Well, let me ask you this, plain devil's advocate. Earlier this evening, we started to question the ambulance fund, for lack of a better thing, for the fire department. Now, if we're trusting the Board of Selectmen to handle all these department things, why are we even considering that? Why did that discussion ever come up?
Because if you have a source of money that doesn't affect the tax rate, you tend to spend it differently than if you have a source of money that does affect the tax rate.
But you just told me the Board of Selectmen, we should trust their judgment.
No,
and
I
they
didn't
seem-
say that. I said if the Board of Selectmen comes in with a budget that we think is affordable to the taxpayers, then our job is much easier. The selectmen have done all of the heavy lifting. If the selectmen come in with a budget that we think exceeds the ability or willingness of the taxpayers to support, then our job is more difficult because we have to go through it to make sure that we can say, here's what the selectmen could have done in order to bring this budget in at a more affordable level. Now,
Okay.
as a result of doing that, we would sometimes then negotiate with the selectmen, and they would say, okay, we'll knock off X dollars from this account, that account, the other account, and come down to 2.2%. Will you accept that? Yes. And then
Well,
we go from
here's
there.
the question. We have looked at the school budget, and we've looked at line items, and we said, well, we think this is too high, and they've gone back and worked it. And we have gone back and looked at different lines on the Board of Selectmen's budget. It had nothing to do with the percentage, because we've gone through this percentage thing back and forth when I first came on the committee, and the committee was split at that time about the percentage. We were split on the percentage last year. So when it comes down to trusting people, well, no, you're saying they're going to propose a budget, it's whatever percentage. You're trusting them to do the best job they can. But
No. I'm just saying that the job they're doing is something that I think we can afford.
okay, how,
I don't think our job is to is to either ourselves or force the selectmen to prepare a budget that is the leanest and meanest that is possible to do. Because in that case, the budget could go into negative numbers. It depends upon your
I'm pretty
values.
sure you were on our committee and we went and pushed for that hard. I'm very sure that you were one of those people that wrote for default budgets because you felt that the increases shouldn't be happening and we went to
Right.
default
That's
budgets.
right.
saying.
That's what I'm saying.
And now you're saying that if,
He said the same thing.
I'm not changing anything. I'm just saying that our work is different, I think, ought to be different, once we have the selectmen's budget, and we can make a judgment about whether or not it is, by selectmen's budget, I mean the school budgets too, whether or not the budgets are increasing at a rate that's affordable or not affordable.
As opposed to looking at the police budget, before it's even part of the selectmen budget,
Yeah.
looking at the fire department budget, before it's part of the selectmen's budget. In the past, you're right, we have looked at it, and because the increases have been way more than a percentage that, even though it was might have been a variable percentage that we all thought it should be, it was way more than that. So we address it more deeply, as Neil was trying to point out. I think all he's trying to say is, it makes sense to wait till the selectmen have the budget together before we talk about it.
Okay,
I think
but-
that's your point.
Yes, I was just, yeah. I think looking at it split up and saying, this is the police budget, and this is, that's the way we look at it to begin with when it's all together. But I think that it's not prudent of our time to look at it all separated until it is together and it is all approved and the selectmen say, this is our budget. We're using time to look at a police budget that may not be the police budget.
Yeah.
Like, we should just wait until the selectmen say, this is our budget, and then I think that even if it's a reasonable increase, we still look at it
yes.
prudently. But I don't think that we need to put the cart before the horse.
Okay, no, that
But-
makes perfect
But
sense.
there's one caveat here, and it has to do with time. If the selectmen don't give us the budget until really late,
Yes.
then we can't go to the police and say, could you explain why you have $100,000 in overtime when last year you only spent $10,000?
Not a good example.
Well, yes, but if we get to like the end of November and Naomi's like, so we're not going to have a budget until January 1st, then at that point we could readdress this and say, all right, we need to meet with each individual department
Naomi, do you
before
see
that.
why I'm saying that? I agree that they should have the budget, I do, but I disagree that we just roll that whatever percentage and we decide by that. I still think you have to look at the various departments, even though it be in the budgets. Go ahead.
Lori, what would happen if the final increase, I'm assuming it's an increase, comes in and we're okay with it? You want to pick apart the budget. So what would that make the blurb? Yes, we support it, but we think these things are wrong with it?
Well, hypothetically, and there was a town.
That's okay, go ahead.
Let me go. There was a town in New Hampshire that was able to get one of those major domo SWAT attack vehicles because they could. And it was very expensive on their budget, but the increase as the whole wasn't terrible. But realistically, that one cost was unnecessary because the town did not require that.
Lori, these are bottom line budgets. If they go and we get a budget approved, they can go out and buy that SWAT vehicle if they want. So you can't say you can't buy that SWAT vehicle.
Was that Keene?
Yeah,
So
some,
that's different.
Different anyway.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, and
But the point
I
is,
know
we're
about
voting on a
that. My
bottom
daughter
line
was
budget.
on the city
We're not-
council.
It's not a line item budget.
She was just,
It doesn't really make sense to say you need to knock this or that out, because they can just go back and spend it.
So why did we spend years going after fire and PD?
Because the overall increase was too much, so then we needed to find things that
Yeah.
we could suggest
I
to cut.
think,
Sounds
you know,
like-
the difference here is that we're a finance committee created by local ordinance, and so we do look at the whole. If we were an elected budget committee, then we probably would have our fingers in each department because we'd be helping to build the budget side by side with the selectmen. I think that's the difference, and what you're proposing would be more in the line of what a budget committee would be doing rather than our finance committee.
yeah.
Chris?
Well, I'm going to see if I can dig up some minutes from last year, because what I recall happening, and this happened when I was on the other side of the desk, is that when the warrant articles started to come in, if one particular department or another had numerous warrant articles and an increase in the budget, then the Board of Selectmen would start looking at changes to balance things off so that the whole warrant, all the articles, budgets and warrant articles, did not go up beyond a certain amount. So even if we were to go through all of these budgets on the schedule that we just discussed, they are in no way final. So I think it's inevitable that we're going to have a few late nights, because I think that when the warrant articles start to come in, either we will ask for some changes or the selectmen will, and it is going to affect what budgets we have.
As far
Naomi?
as the warrant,
What is your gut feeling? Are we going to end up being out until January? I mean, you've had years
No
where the
pressure.
board has said we will have it to you and they get it to on budget and warrant articles. When are we
Well,
going to see all that?
when
Because
is
now,
that?
from what you're saying, not only the budget, we need to wait for the warrant articles. And if that's true, why have anything but a general meeting in,
Well, we can look at the
December.
budget, but to scrutinize it in detail at the point when we had here might be a little bit premature, because the warrant articles are going to start rolling in, and these might not be even close to final numbers in November.
when is the last date to get a warrant article in for the selectmen
It's
and
in
for
January.
petitioners?
January 14th, right? Something.
I know
Petitioners
I
are
know we have to
earlier.
have the whole thing
It's the
posted
first
for
week of January, I think, or the second week of January.
Yeah, it's backed up off of the date of the
Because the public hearing for the
deliberative.
budget isn't until, it's always been like the 14th.
Martin Luther King
Yeah,
week.
Martin Luther King
is that
weekend.
January?
Yes, of January.
That's really late. That doesn't give us much time
No.
to,
I wasn't, but usually you've already hashed things over before then,
Yeah.
because you have the whole month of December.
but do we know what the warrant articles are? For example, if the police department decides that they're going to put, going to have a very meager increase in the selectmen's budget, but they're going to put a number of things that should be in the budget in warrant articles, which has been known to happen in the past, we need to include the warrant articles in the budget for purposes of calculating
Correct.
affordability.
That's true, but I think what a pretty good idea what the warrant articles are on November 6th. Granted, the selectmen don't always put them all in there, but they typically do.
It's number 6.
So when we, November 6th is when
Oh.
she's
CIP.
gonna try to get the CIP people in here, so we'll know what police is asking for, what fire's asking for.
Well, Keith, just that you, there's a couple warrant articles that we don't have numbers for,
Right.
okay, for like communications, we're still talking about communications. That
According
don't
to
have
the chief,
that
you wanna do
number.
it now.
Excuse me?
Anyway, never mind.
So we're still talking about communications.
Police and fire, you mean, or both?
Yeah, there's an outcry because our communication system drops in various towns.
Didn't we
Yeah.
get that fixed last year?
We've been trying to fix it
We're
for
trying to fix it for years.
decades.
It's a whole
We
different.
spent a lot of money unsuccessfully fixing it.
How about tin cans and string?
It's
We
fine.
haven't tried that
It's fine if you don't need them.
Right.
My point is, we
You wanna
won't,
be
we won't
able
have
to-
perfect information, but we will have more than 0 by November 6th.
Okay.
If my heart goes tick-tock, tick, instead of talk, tick, tick, I'd rather not be using cans and a string to call the,
I know, some of the reception around here, you do that.
It's just, and I've always said, it's not a matter of if, it's when. Where we have a crisis. So I don't wanna be paying for some terrible incident if we can't get radio communication.
Oh, agreed. I just was under the impression that the money that was added, that the police chief asked for last year, he got, and to work on communications. I sat in this room listening to that, and it was supposed to, he was supposed to be getting that, and they had somebody come in and look, and that they were gonna get that all adjusted. Did we not get that adjusted?
Never got on the warrant article.
I think we're confusing two things. There's the communication systems as a whole, and then there were some communications devices within the police department building
Ah.
that had
So
to
it was
be
cameras.
funded.
That's
Yeah.
what it was.
Okay.
Mhm.
But I don't know, I can't envision, as far as budget season, I don't think anybody's asking for any drastic. It's gonna be pretty much the same. And then the warrant articles, as Keith and Tom had mentioned, there was discussion of 2 firefighters, that would be a warrant article. Nothing else from them. and then you've got the CIP articles.
And you will have a contract, police department
But
contract.
Yes.
Department union contract this year, right.
When are you
Wow.
gonna set the tax rate, Emily?
When we had to wait for the continuing resolution to solve itself,
Yeah,
because they were, and now they're just setting appointments, they started on October 1st. We checked today, and I was hoping to do it Monday, but we're not ready, so unless we do it by Friday. If not, we'll set it the next week.
couple weeks,
We've been ready since September,
okay.
but you have to wait for the Department of Education for enrollment, and then the school stuff to get in. So it's populated, DRA just hasn't let it go yet, to set a date.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
What if we were to receive the budgets according to the schedule when they're presented to the selectmen, make them available to all of us, review them, and then request to see department heads if we see something we want to talk about, and otherwise wait till the whole is put together if we don't want to talk about it?
I'm
Hey,
good
Lori, I
with
guess
that.
I thought the reps that come
Mhm.
can ask questions too that night of the department head that's here. So if you sit on the town side, if you sit on the school side and want to join us that night, police has some things,
No, we do not allow the school the school gets to,
I wasn't talking school.
okay,
So the town, when you guys can come sit any night of, any Monday night, you're welcome to join us.
yes, yes.
So if you wanna sit there and when the police chief or the fire chief or anybody is presenting their budget, the chair always asks if the finance has any questions. So, and then we're on YouTube on Tuesday morning, that you can go watch on YouTube and watch the meeting from the night before. Cause the cable's been putting it up Tuesday morning after Monday's
Oh.
meeting.
Okay,
So you can always get that too, but you would kind of have a sense of what he's talking about. So when you look at the numbers, and if you're there and you have a question, by all means, raise your hand. That's what it's for.
okay. But I like your idea, Chris.
I do too.
So as we stand right now, our next meeting will be in November.
6?
At 7 o'clock, yes, no?
Yes.
And at that point,
Yes.
do we know what we're going to be covering other than approving minutes?
CIP.
Okay. Along with the department heads that present with CIP,
Yeah, that
correct?
Covers the package.
Okay, does anybody have anything else?
Adjournment?
Are we still gonna do that at 7 o'clock, or are we
Yes.
gonna, okay.
Deliberative
Question-
session is also February 8th, if you want to mark your calendar.
What is that?
Just February 8th is deliberative session.
I have a suggestion. So there's a lot of conversation about timeline and shrinking windows, the amount of time this committee has to work. It seems to me like creating a simple timeline, and I'm happy to help do it. I'll need a little bit of an education. When typically warrant articles are released, from that to the deliberative session and everything that happens in between. For most people are visual learners, if you just develop a basic timeline, we can, check that it's right or wrong.
I might be able to give you a rough idea on November 6th if I can just get some information out of the department heads and let you know roughly what we're looking at for warrant articles. That would give you a little heads up.
Will you let me know so that I can let Matt know to tell everybody on the committee for CIP? If all the department heads are coming for CIP, if you ask Jack what he thinks for a ballpark for time.
Long.
So that means,
Long.
ladies and gentlemen,
if it's
you
Jack.
can bring drinks, you can bring food, whatever you need to do to get through the meeting.
It brings some
I
jolt.
don't mind working with Tom for a timeline, but we could, I have
That's
to look
fine.
at the RSA.
I just need a little bit of
Must have
information, I'll
someone or
create it.
so.
Yeah,
Even if it's based on assumptions, and we can fix assumptions.
okay. Because I have a calendar upstairs I have to follow for the local government, the deadlines that they statutorily already got embedded.
So Matt, you're going to send out to all of us phone numbers, all the contact information, correct?
The only reason I haven't done it yet is I was waiting for well, I had one person who I didn't have any contact information for, but I think she's gone now, so.
Oh, yeah.
And you have Irene Meany? Eileen Meany's contact information too?
Yes, I do.
All right, so that we all have that also.
Okay.
And make sure everybody has Naomi's phone number.
529-7535. It's on the website.
Okay.
So is my email.
Okay.
It's on speed dial for me.
Most people it is. Fair warning, I call ID.
Fair warning.
Does anybody have anything else they want to bring up?
Want an adjournment?
How do you
Oh,
block your
one
call
other
ID?
thing. Anybody who cannot make meetings, the sooner you know, the better off it is that we know that you're not coming, you know. If you have plans, don't wait until tonight to tell us. Give us a couple days heads up, because one thing we also have to make sure of is we've got quorum, which isn't a problem right now, but going forward, that is important. And as we explained at the first meeting, we're going through all this stuff now. What's ever presented at the next meeting, we're not recapping what went on at this meeting. Part of our job is to make sure we're on deck.
And if you miss a meeting, you're on YouTube too the next morning. So I let you know.
Okay.
Fame and
Motion.
fortune.
I better start trusting better.
Does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
That's my favorite motion, I'll make it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's go home.
Send it by
You being